Tomorrow, the Haro family will walk into court for what could be the most pivotal hearing of this entire case. For months, silence, suspicion, and unanswered questions have surrounded the disappearance of baby Emmanuel. But tonight, everything changes. For the very first time, Rebecca Haro, the grieving mother at the center of this tragedy, breaks her silence. Not with pleas for her child's safe return, not with words of unity as a family, but with accusations aimed directly at her own husband, Jake Haro. In an emotional interview just hours before the court hearing, Rebecca speaks of fear, betrayal, and secrets that can no longer stay hidden. Her words are heavy, her voice trembles, but the weight of what she reveals may shift the entire course of this case. This is no longer just the story of a missing baby. It is the story of a fractured family. A mother turning against a father, a community desperate for the truth, and a nation watching closely as the Haro family secrets unravel. But one question still remains, one question that has haunted every step of this investigation: where is baby Emmanuel Haro? For months, the disappearance of baby Emmanuel has haunted Yucaipa and captured the attention of an entire nation. What began as a missing child case quickly unraveled into one of the most unsettling mysteries in recent memory. A baby vanished without a trace, no signs of forced entry, no footprints leading away, no witnesses who saw him taken. Just an empty crib, and two parents whose stories never quite aligned. As investigators dug deeper, contradictions began to pile up. What time Emmanuel was last seen? Who put him to bed? Even whether the doors were locked or unlocked. Each retelling brought new details and new suspicions. Then came the search warrant. Detectives combed through the Haro family home, determined to uncover what lay beneath the surface. What they seized was chilling. Handwritten journals, filled with entries hinting at conflict and despair. Articles of clothing, hidden away, now under forensic testing. And what one investigator cryptically called the missing pieces of a dark puzzle. Through it all, Rebecca Haro stood before cameras in tears. Her pleas were raw, her anguish visible. To the public, she was a grieving mother desperate for answers. But Jake Haro, her husband, told a different story, not through his words, but through his silence. He appeared distant, cold, detached. His lack of emotion became its own kind of evidence in the eyes of a watching world. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some neighbors whispered about arguments in the Haro home. Others pointed to Jake's odd behavior before and after Emmanuel's disappearance. Online forums erupted with theories: was this an abduction gone wrong, a carefully staged cover-up, or something far darker within the walls of the Haro home? And now, on the eve of a pivotal court hearing, Rebecca's silence has broken. For the first time, she speaks not in press conferences, not in rehearsed statements, but directly and emotionally about what really happened inside her family home. What she reveals may not only shake the foundations of her marriage, it may expose the truth behind baby Emmanuel's disappearance. This is Detective Emma, and tomorrow morning I'll be inside that courtroom, making sure no detail, no whisper, no piece of evidence is left behind. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because this investigation isn't just mine, it's ours. Together we follow the truth. When Rebecca Haro sat down for this interview, you could see it in her eyes before she ever spoke. The exhaustion, the fear, the kind of pain that doesn't fade with time. Her voice was low, almost trembling, as she began to talk about what life inside her home was really like before baby Emmanuel disappeared. She admitted it wasn't the picture-perfect family the world imagined. Behind closed doors, she described a household filled with tension, arguments that seemed to never end. What started as small disagreements over money or daily stress slowly grew into explosive fights. And at the center of it all, Rebecca said, was Jake. To the public, he appeared calm, almost unshakable. But inside their home, Rebecca painted a very different picture. A man growing distant. A man whose patience wore thin when Emmanuel cried at night. A man who she claimed was slipping further and further away from the role of father and husband. Then she spoke of the night before Emmanuel vanished. According to Rebecca, the arguments that night were worse than ever before. She recalled Jake's tone, his anger, the way he looked at her and at Emmanuel. She said something inside her told her this wasn't just another fight. Something felt dangerously different. The next morning, when Emmanuel's crib was empty, Rebecca's world shattered. But unlike the cameras who heard her pleas, unlike the community who believed in a story of abduction, Rebecca confessed that her first thought was Jake. That deep inside, she already feared her husband knew more than he had ever admitted. As she spoke, tears welled in her eyes. Her hands shook, and for the first time, Rebecca Haro said aloud what she had carried in silence for months, that the danger may not have come from outside her home, but from within it. And with those words, the story of baby Emmanuel shifted. This was no longer just a missing child case. This was the story of a mother who no longer trusted the man she shared her home with. And tomorrow in court, those words could change everything. In the interview, Rebecca Haro's voice shifted, no longer trembling, no longer cautious. What started as hesitant memories turned into direct accusations, statements so specific, so damning, that they could shape the very outcome of tomorrow's court hearing. Rebecca described how Jake's patience with Emmanuel had begun to wear thin. Nights filled with the baby's cries often ended in arguments, sharp words, and slammed doors. To the public, Jake seemed like a quiet, stoic father. But to Rebecca, behind closed doors, he was something else entirely. Cold, withdrawn, sometimes frightening. She claimed that in the days before Emmanuel vanished, Jake grew secretive. She noticed him locking doors in the house, doors that had never been locked before. He stayed up late, pacing, making hushed phone calls that ended the moment she walked into the room. When she asked questions, his explanations were vague, almost rehearsed, as though he was hiding something. Then Rebecca shared the moment that has haunted her every day since. One night, long after Emmanuel had been put to bed, she said she woke to see Jake carrying a bundle out of the nursery. The lights were dim, and at first she told herself it was nothing, that maybe he was just moving blankets. But the way he moved, hurried, deliberate, almost secretive, etched itself into her memory. She never asked him about it, not then. But now, looking back, she said she can't shake the thought, was that the night everything changed. The morning Emmanuel was gone, Rebecca remembers Jake's words clearly. He told her, "Stay calm." But it wasn't comforting, it wasn't reassuring. She described it as cold, detached, like a script he had already prepared. That, she said, was the moment she realized something was terribly wrong. For weeks, Rebecca carried these suspicions in silence. She feared no one would believe her. She feared what speaking out might do to her family, or to her. But now, with a courtroom hearing just hours away, she said she could no longer live with the weight of that silence. These were not vague impressions. They were pointed allegations, locked doors, whispered phone calls, a bundle carried in the night, words that sounded scripted. To the investigators listening, they were potential leads. To prosecutors, they could become building blocks of a case. And to the public, they were chilling. Evidence that perhaps the truth of Emmanuel's disappearance had never been about an intruder, but about what was happening inside the Haro family home. As Rebecca's words unfolded, the divide between husband and wife became undeniable. This was not the image of two grieving parents, united in search of their child. This was the image of a mother pulling away from her husband, piece by piece, accusation by accusation, determined to expose the secrets she believes he's hiding. And now, the nation waits to see, will her words become the breakthrough investigators have been waiting for, or will they be dismissed as the desperate claims of a broken woman searching for answers? Either way, tomorrow those words will echo inside the courtroom. Tomorrow morning, Rebecca Haro's words will leave the privacy of an interview and echo inside the cold, unflinching walls of a courtroom. For prosecutors, her accusations could be the missing piece, the emotional human thread that ties together weeks of evidence, suspicions, and unanswered questions. For Jake Haro, they could mark the beginning of the end. Legal experts say the stakes could not be higher. The locked doors, the whispered phone calls, the bundle carried from the nursery. These are not vague suspicions anymore, they are details that, if prosecutors can anchor them with forensic evidence, could paint a picture of premeditation. One attorney told reporters, "A jury doesn't forget a mother's words, especially when those words speak of fear, secrecy, and a child who never came home." But Jake will not walk into court defenseless. His attorneys are preparing to attack Rebecca's credibility. They will argue that grief distorts memory, that a traumatized mother cannot be trusted to recount events clearly. They will remind the judge and jury that no body has ever been found. They will insist that without Emmanuel, there is no crime scene, no timeline, no definitive proof. In their words, suspicion is not evidence, and emotions cannot convict a man. And yet, public opinion is already shifting. Across Ukaipa, whispers have turned to outrage. Across the nation, families following this case are asking the same question: has Rebecca finally shattered the silence and exposed the truth? Or has she simply opened the door to a battle that could fracture this family, this town, and this courtroom even further? Criminal psychologists warn us, fractured families often reveal fractured truths. Sometimes desperation uncovers hidden realities. Sometimes it distorts them. Tomorrow the courtroom will have to decide, are Rebecca's accusations the product of a grieving heart, or the testimony of a woman who has carried the truth alone for far too long? Still, through all the accusations, all the seized evidence, and all the conflicting narratives, one fact remains undeniable: baby Emmanuel is still missing. His crib sits empty, his toys untouched. His face continues to stare back from weathered missing posters taped to shop windows and street poles. His absence lingers like a shadow over every word spoken, every theory debated, every accusation made. Tomorrow the courtroom may bring arguments. It may bring testimony. It may even bring the first steps toward answers. But tonight, one haunting question remains, the question that has driven this investigation from the very beginning: where is baby Emmanuel Haro? Until that question is answered, this case is about more than guilt or innocence. It is about justice for a child who never had a chance. And for Rebecca Haro, tomorrow may be her last chance, not just to speak but to finally be heard. To make the world believe that beneath the silence, beneath the fear, beneath the shadows of doubt, the truth is waiting to come out. This is Detective Emma, and tomorrow morning I'll be inside that courtroom, making sure no detail, no whisper, no piece of evidence is left behind. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, because this investigation isn't just mine, it's ours. Together we follow the truth.